couple of times a month, 9 families get together for what we call home church. There's no stage, there's no production, it's just people that we love. We share a meal, and then somebody shares something that's been on their heart. And it's families, it's like moms, dads, and kids. Kids as young as, I think, 5 or 6 years old, all the way up to like some kids in their early 20s. So it's all of us, and it can be a lot of people when everybody shows up. This time, it was my turn to share something. I had been thinking a lot about a simple idea that's really easy to say and really hard to live. Love your neighbor. Especially the ones who make it difficult. And it reminded me of a story that I hadn't thought about in a while. It was probably a year, maybe 2 years ago. I challenged this same group to think of somebody in their life that they didn't particularly like, or maybe someone that they'd just been avoiding, and to find one small way to love on that person. So we took a couple of minutes to just scribble down a name. The assignment was simple. Do something this week, right? So write the name down, and then you're gonna act on that. For me, I didn't have to think very long. We share a wall with the business next door to our studio. And for months, they had been parking their vehicles over the lines. I mean, they drew chalk lines to let us know that these were their spots, which nobody really has assigned spots where our studio is, but they were blocking spots that we would normally use, and they were just generally just being not great neighbors. I don't want to go into all of the details, but it was frustrating, and I had no idea how to address it. I felt like I needed to, I just hadn't figured out how to do it yet. So sitting in that moment of reflection, I realized that this was the person for me. Was not looking forward to this. The neighbor that I need to love isn't some abstract concept. He's literally next door. So I went home and I baked a batch of my famous salted chocolate chip cookies. I wrote a little note on a card that said something about how I appreciated having them as our neighbor. I walked next door, reintroduced myself, and I told the owner, I said, hey, I'm your neighbor. These cookies, I think I said something like, these cookies are not poisonous. Handed him the cookies, and that was it. No agenda, no confrontation, just cookies and a note. The very next morning, the truck, this is literally the very next morning after this. This is not an exaggeration or an embellishment to make this story even cooler, but literally the next day, the truck that had been parked over the line, well over the line for weeks and weeks, the one that had been quietly driving me crazy, was moved. It was parked properly, like it had never been a problem. I know that this wasn't a coincidence. Here's what I keep coming back to. I don't think that there's ever a bad reason to love someone, even when they don't deserve it, especially when they don't deserve it. Because honestly, we all do plenty of things in our lives to not deserve most of what we have or get to experience. There's a lot of grace being given, being offered to us than we probably realize. And I think the more that I lean into that, the more that I try to extend it to other people, even when it's uncomfortable or, in my opinion, not deserved, the more that I see it come back in ways that I didn't expect. That doesn't mean it's easy. Baking cookies for someone who's been irritating you for weeks, it's a weird move. It felt awkward. Part of me just wanted to leave a passive-aggressive sticky note on their windshield, if I'm being honest. But the cookies worked. Not because they were a strategy, but because they were genuine. This whole thing reminds me of one of my favorite business books. It's called, I got it over here somewhere. It's called The Go-Giver by Bob Burg and John David Mann. It follows this fictional character who's spent his whole career climbing, grinding, hustling, and taking. And he gets challenged to flip the whole thing. Instead of being a go-getter, to become a go-giver, to show up, to serve, to be helpful, to share a lead that could be yours, to trust that in a world full of scarcity mindset, there's actually abundance and a lot more fulfillment when you lead with generosity. There's nothing wrong with being a go-getter. I love me some go-getters in my life, and there's plenty of things in my life that I go get them. I love people who are hungry. That's one of our core values at work, and driven, and people that just go after it. But what I've found in my own life is that the deepest fulfillment comes from trying to add value first and trusting that the right clients, the right opportunities, the right relationships are going to come at the right time. So that doesn't mean sitting on your hands. It means showing up. And speaking of showing up, I've been seeing the fruit of this in a really tangible way lately. For years, you've heard me talk about this if you've been following along my newsletters here, but for years I stayed away from social media. I would post updates on Facebook and rarely on Instagram, but I stayed away from posting vulnerable stories. I stayed away from sharing things that I actually think about and care about deeply. I just told myself that it wasn't the right time, or I didn't have anything worth saying that, for me to be in a relationship with people, like that's what I cared about, and sharing those things in person was really like my go-to motto. I just assume that, people on my Facebook and whatever, they're not going to care. But at the beginning of this year, I started showing up very differently than I have online. I started writing these newsletters. I started sharing them. I started taking snippets from my podcast, little videos from my podcast episodes. I started making little videos from this newsletter. Not perfectly polished. Also, like videos of me just walking home from taking my daughter to school. Not trying to optimize, create like super engaging thumbnails or come up with like the best hook and whatever, but really just trying to show up as my real, honest self. Sharing what I'm learning, sharing what I'm building, sharing what I'm getting wrong, sharing, sometimes I get stuff right, and it's fun to share those too. But in the last few weeks, the last 8 to 10 weeks, I've had more people reach out to me, encourage me, comment, send me voice messages on Instagram than probably all of last year and maybe the year before. Not because I suddenly got better at marketing, because I finally stopped hiding. I got out of my head and thought, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to show up and just share. And I'm also going to be okay if nobody says anything. That's fine, because they haven't said anything much before. What's more, not saying. I think that was a fear that I had that maybe had gone unchecked. It turns out that the go-giver thing works in content too. Show up, be helpful, be real, share your story, and just trust the process. I'm still learning this. I'm still really early in this journey. I am still the guy who wanted to leave a passive-aggressive sticky note on the windshield before I chose cookies. But I'm trying, and I think that's the whole thing, the trying, the journey. Whether it's the neighbor next door, it's the audience that you haven't built yet, or the person in your life who's hardest to love. You don't have to have it figured out. You just have to show up with the cookies. Oh, and if you haven't read The Go-Giver, seriously, go pick it up. I've read this book a dozen times, maybe more. That's not an exaggeration. I've actually listened to it way more than I've read it. So that's what's true there. It's short, it's a story, not a textbook, and it'll mess with how you think about business and really, I think, in all of your relationships. And one more thing, mastermind applications are still open. There are 12 seats. If you want to be in a room full of people who challenge you to show up in business and in life and not perform, this is it. I'm going to leave a link in the description, or you can just go to mastermind.ryancoral.com. Here is to showing up. Thanks for being here. If you like it, leave a comment. Let me know what stood out. Thanks for following along this journey, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.